Hello there, my name's Brandon, and in this video series I'm going to show you how I created this pixel art scene with Clip Studio Paint. Over the entire series, we'll cover the approaches taken to design characters, objects, and text, as well as finishing the illustration with color and shading. In this first video, we're going to discuss sizing, character sprite design, and some initial composition using Linework. The first thing we'll need to do is decide on a canvas size for our project. While we can adjust this at any point, it's important to think about ahead of time since our characters and objects will be scaled accordingly within those pixel dimensions. A lot of times my canvas sizes are inspired by retro hardware, which you generally find in a range from about 150 to 300 pixels. For the illustration in this series, we'll use a canvas size of 320 by 180 pixels, because that scales at an exact integer multiple up to 720p, 1080p, and 4K. And this versatile integer scaling means that this would actually be a pretty good choice if you were designing a video game to be played on those screens, since it would fit the screen perfectly without any distortion or cropping necessary. In Clip Studio, we'll create a new document and make sure to change our units to pixels, then enter those dimensions for the width and height. We don't need to worry about the resolution setting. My default here is 72 dpi, for example. That only comes into play if we're going to turn the artwork into a physical print, in which case it defines how many pixels there would be per every inch of print. But in this case, we're good to go with just concerning ourselves with the width and height in the pixel dimensions. Okay, I'm starting here with a gray background to work on, and I'm also going to go up to the View menu and enable the grid. I've got my setting configured for an 8x8 pixel grid sizing, because that's the unit size used on most retro hardware, but you can change that value in the grid settings if you prefer something else. Or you don't have to use a grid at all. This is just kind of an optional thing to help plan your sizing and alignment. But I find it can be useful for capturing that retro feel and just giving you some guidance on the way that the artwork can be built up. The first thing I'm doing is creating my character sprite, since they can be used to dictate the scaling of the environment around them. On a new layer, I've created a little box with a size of 4 tiles wide by 5 tiles tall according to the grid, or 32 by 40 pixels. And that's going to roughly be the area that I want my character to occupy. I'm using the millipen set to a large brush size of 10 pixels to drop in a circle for the character head. And then I switch over to the dot pen to start drawing a stick figure as the base for my character sprite. The millipen lets you adjust brush size and settings, but I like using the dot pen as my primary brush when doing single pixel work because it's just a solid 1 pixel brush and I find it to have a good response on screen as well. From here, I start adding form to the character by using this stick figure base to guide me. I should mention as well that before jumping into the pixel work, I had done a few rough sketches to plan out my ideas. And even messing around with simple stick figure skeletons can really save you a lot of time just with how quick you can experiment with poses or character proportions. So in this case, my sketch was also a bit of a roadmap with where I wanted to go on this character sprite. I thought it'd be fun to do a side-scroller design where the main character is on roller skates, and this whole scene was planned as them visiting an upgrade shop for skates. Continuing on with the character sprite, oftentimes what I'll do is flip the sprite to its mirror image using the transform controls. Working in one orientation the whole time, our eyes can get used to the way something looks, and it makes it easy to overlook some of the flaws sometimes. So mirroring the image can give your brain a fresh look at the design. It's something you kind of need to experience on your own art for it to make sense, so give it a try if you're looking for ways to proofread your work. In this case, it helped me spot a few changes I wanted to make to the curvature of the back arm, and then I finished up by adding in the hood and just making subtle tweaks here and there. When I'm doing something in this Linework heavy cartoony style, I like to get this line art in place first and make sure it's readable just on its own without any color or shading, because it means that the final sprite should be even more readable by the time we add in those finishing touches. Before composing the scene, I decided to place the character roughly in the center, and I'm just using that grid to try and visualize a few things like how much ground I want underneath them, how much space the shop off to the right should take up, and then thinking about the placement of information along the top as a HUD. To box out some of these elements, I go up to View and enable the Snap to Grid setting. And as the name suggests, this will make the tool snap onto those grid lines. So what I'm doing here is using my selection tool to size over those grid tiles, and then filling them with my main color using the Alt Backspace shortcut. You could also use the rectangular shape tool to do this, but for some reason my mind always goes straight to the selection fill combo. From here, I'm using the eraser to break some of these bars up into individual tiles for lettering, because this is all going to become like the life bar, or stamina in this case, and other kind of on-screen info. And off to the side, there's going to be a character portrait. Especially for the lettering, I find it useful to start from boxes like this and then erase into the letter that you want. That way we can see beforehand how much space we want the letters to occupy, and then kind of work backwards to find those shapes within the limited space. A lot of times if you look back at retro game lettering, it'll occupy sizing like this, kind of around 7x7 pixels or so. Because if you're working with these 8x8 tiles, you need to leave at least one empty pixel row or column as space before the letter next to it. For the character portrait, I'm using the line tool while holding Shift to draw an inner box and turn this into a frame. Then I grab the ellipse tool and set it to the line only setting, and draw out a rough circle that'll become the main form of the head. With pixel art, it's not uncommon to run into some irregularities when making circles or curves, and I like to handle these by erasing pixels from the curve when they feel like they're not sitting in the right spot. With just a broken outline left over, your eye can kind of connect the dots and fill it in, so it still works as a nice guide for continuing to build something up. I'm going for a bit of a 3/4 view on the face here, so I've placed down a few of the main features and then continue working with this space to turn it into something a bit more readable. Character portraits are a great way to get a closer look at a character's design, and I mean the sizing on this one is actually only a bit larger than the space we had to work with for the character sprite's head anyway, but there still is an appreciable difference in detail, and I do like the alignment with the lettering beside it too. I thought it'd be fun to have some unique roller skate themed addition to the HUD, maybe something to think of as like a skate status indicator or something like that. To keep it logical to look at, I've kept the feet as left and then right, which I guess would be like if they're being viewed from above, or maybe kind of like looking through the skate. Either way, I feel like it's something unique for this theme. And again, I've used the grid to maintain consistency in size and placement on the canvas. Now that some core elements are in place, I'm going to start creating a rough composition of the foreground scenery. Using the line tool, we can hold Shift to maintain straight lines either as horizontals or as perfect 45-degree angles. One thing I watch out for with Linework is avoiding having certain lines intersect with each other, like how the top of the wall is lining up exactly with the bottom of the roof here. In this case, I'd opt to change the height of one of them so that they can be distinguished as their own entities and not confuse the eye as a continuous line or object. Overall, we're not being too detailed yet, basically just boxing out the kind of silhouette or footprint of each area. The plan is to get the basic shapes in place first, then we can go in after and add more characterization to everything. Although it's not necessary, I found that using the grid helped speed up the decision making here, since it provides some point of reference and unit size for everything, and I feel like that's just a good way to tidy up the composition. Alright, so that'll do it for part 1. Join me in the next video and we'll move on to detailing the environment and adding some flat shading. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.